Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have with me a very special guest, PL Stuart. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Daniel. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh
Honestly,
no, it's always cool for me when I can get somebody I been talking to for a while, on Twitter or something like that. My wife, she just left for the gym, and my sister-in-law's, and she's like, you just love talking to people, because I think she's tired of hearing about my writing and books, because I talk to her every day about it. So anytime where I can get and talk to a fellow writer and author, she's really excited, because then I kind of get it out of my system for later in the evening. So. And I have you and Chris both today, so she was
oh
so
yeah,
excited to, she's like, oh, finally somebody for you. I think so, I was telling Scott Drakeford yesterday, I was like, I think sometimes she's just like, oh, he'll be entertained for an hour or two.
oh yeah. Rise of the Maze of Scott Draper. Yeah, that's on my
Yeah, yeah,
TBR.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sounds like a great book. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
was Chris Brenning, Hellborn King. That's
Oh,
definitely on my TBR
oh
too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
My friend, he was like, wait, he goes, you have Scott Drakeford, PL Stewart, and Christopher G. Brennan coming on for a second time this weekend. I was like, heck yeah. And I also was supposed to have Jeff, I'm probably going to say it right, Pontanella, I believe is how you say it. Um,
Oh,
the Chaos
yep,
Gate. Yeah.
yep,
So we
yep.
moved to later in March, but yeah, I was like, man, what a great weekend. And I had
Oh yeah,
Jade
that's
Smith for the
okay.
second time last week, Hannah M. Long, or AHM Long, and then I had Emily Inkpen. So those are coming out.
Emily Inkpen, yeah,
So
those are
yeah,
great
so it's
names.
been a
Yeah,
really good two
awesome.
weeks for me on the
Yeah,
podcast.
you're rocking and rolling, man. All
Yeah,
right.
trying. Well, all right. So we'll start with that first question. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
It's been phenomenal. I started late in life because I planned to write much earlier, but I didn't actually get
That
published in
feeling.
my 50s. I decided because I was doing it late in life, rather than going through the whole career and trying to get an agent and then trying to have the agent shop your book to trad publishing, I decided to go the self pub route. I got an India published assist company, what most people consider a vanity press. It's called Fees and Press. They're great. They're kind of like the Cadillac or Mercedes of indie publishing assist companies here in Canada. Really reputable, and a couple of other great authors that you probably know on Twitter have published with them. AJ Retker, he's a great
Oh yeah, yeah,
dark fantasy author. Yeah, he published with them originally, and for example, so went with them and worked out really well. First book, A Drowned Kingdom, published February 2nd, 2021. So far the response has been fantastic, and the audiobook just came out. That's also getting a lot of love. I actually think the book translates well to audiobook. That's it. That's my baby. That's A Drowned Kingdom. So she's been out for over a year now, and book two, The Last of the Atlanteans, is dropping soon in the next few weeks. So so far, advanced reading copies, people are really stoked. They're really loving it. So they've been saying it's far better than the first book. So that's a big compliment.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so that's my writing journey. I plan to write 7 books in
Oh
this
wow.
series, and 20 total books in my universe. So I have like 2 prequel trilogies planned after this initial 7 book
Oh wow.
series. So, and then I have another 7 book series kind of to wrap up where this series leaves off. So yeah, my writing journey is going to be hopefully going on for quite a few decades. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Wow, so that's actually really good to know. So that actually means that I do have a couple of panels coming up where I'm inviting authors, like 3 or 4 authors, to come and talk at those panels. So that actually gives me a great one to invite you to, just knowing that for
Oh wow, I'd be
your
honored.
out. So how you're planning out those series and prequels. That's actually what I'm doing with my own fantasy series. So I would love to have you
Fantastic.
back and talk about that. So I'm so glad that you said that. So that actually also gives me a whole separate line of questions for our next interview. So that's awesome. That's
Oh,
really good.
awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to your stuff drops, man.
Yeah,
I'll put that on my
yeah.
TBR.
I get so distracted by, books and authors like yourself. I think I was actually, I have a really great independent bookstore here in my town, and it's just great. Like you and a few other people, they're able to order for me. So it's like I get to order, your book and also support an independent, bookstore at the
Well,
same
that's great.
time.
Thank you for
And
doing that.
actually,
That's
both of
great.
my favorite bookstores in New York State are like that. So it's been really nice. It's
That's
been
awesome.
pretty
That's
cool.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's great to hear. I'm so happy to hear, like that, things are going well for you. I've seen your book shared a lot, especially within, it must be because you had dropped stuff about book two. It's really been the last like 2 or 3 weeks. It seems like every time I turn around, and I try to share everything that I can, for people
Oh,
like
thank you.
yourself. Yeah, no offense to anybody, like I'll share anybody's stuff, but if it's somebody I know, I'm like, on both accounts, really trying to go. So it's nice to see, so many people have enjoyed book one. And I'm a huge, mythology fan. I'm a history teacher. I love Atlantean
Oh, wow,
stuff.
that's amazing.
So as soon as I saw your cover, I was like, yeah, I want to follow that guy. I went and put the book on my Goodreads, like right off the bat. And I got to say, that second cover, like I love the first one because I used to teach graphic design. Like I love the first one, but that second one with that elephant is just,
Yeah,
it's
nice.
so cool. It evokes so much imagery and imagination. So yeah, they're both very, very stellar. So
Oh, thank you very much. I
yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that you have so many books planned for, just this. I just feel like so many people plan out great world building and then, just go into, just like a trilogy. And I
Mhm.
just kind of felt like with a few people recently, I'm like, well, that's kind of a waste because you have such a good, product. And I just love to see that people are doing kind of that old Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms type of thing,
Yeah.
where they have multiple books planned and, in that world. So that makes me really excited for you. So
Oh, thanks. I'm pretty stoked too about that. So yeah,
that's awesome.
thanks.
All right. So my favorite question here. I was doing so much research on your book one, but for our audience, for that second question, what is your book, A Drowned Kingdom, about?
Okay, well, my book, A Drowned Kingdom, is partially based on my version of the famous philosopher Plato's tale of the lost realm of Atlantis. So I called my version Atalantics. I know it doesn't sound too creative, but there's reasons for that. But I also wanted people to hearken back to Plato's tale because that's where it began. So if I'm going to have, my version, I definitely want to recognize, Plato's, which of course is such a timeless classic. And right now it's so fascinating because right now there's someone out there right now looking for the location of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that's just transcended the centuries, right? One of those fables. And but so mainly the book is about a flawed, bigoted, very controversial type of character. He's a prince. He's the second in line to the throne of Atalantics. Again, my version of Atlantis. And no big spoilers there. According to legend, Atlantis sank. Well, so does my Atalantics. And my main character, he's one of the survivors, and he takes the last remnants of his people across this sea to another continent, a new continent, which is somewhere that's populated by what is, in his opinion, pagan warlords and mages, and he's his society is very they feel they're very elite, and they have these monotheistic views where they worship a single god, and they're colonialists, they're subjugators. But now they're not what they were. They're reduced to just this handful of people. And so he has to be the leader and lead his people in this in this new world, forge alliances, survive, because people want to do him, and he feels that he can still, even with this reduced following, that he can still, essentially take over the new continent and impose his religion on them. And people don't want that. And, so, but he still, like I said, he has to forge alliances. He, exposed to these people on this new continent, some of his views, start to change a little bit. And he starts to open and expand his mind. He's very entrenched in his views. And, he has a lot to face, a lot of danger, battle. And, so that's what the series is. That's the book, and the series is going to be about his rise to power in a new continent after the downfall of Atlantis.
I personally feel like if you need more than that in our audience, then this is the wrong podcast for you. Just personally, I have to say, I just loved everything that I was reading about book one. My friend literally was like, "Hey, have you seen this guy in his book?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." I said, "It's definitely on my radar." I said, "It's on my TBR." I'm like, "I'm really trying to get there." I saved it for my summer reading because I'm like, I don't want to get
Oh,
bogged. There's
that's
certain
awesome.
books that I don't want to get bogged down with work, because then it's not the people's books recently I've been reading or the authors or their writing. It's just that I've been just burnt out because I'm a teacher. And your books is one of those where I don't want to be distracted. Like
Oh,
I
thank
know
you.
I'm going to enjoy it. I want to have time to enjoy it. So I've been saving it for the summer, but I'm like, man, it could be June like any day now because I have so many books like yours, book one planned. And my friend was looking at my TBR. He's like, man, that just sounds awesome. But I have to say, I absolutely love your description on your website for A Drowned Kingdom. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
that was such an amazing description. It was enough, to get me interested, and you had enough details there. I felt like you had, several hooks in there where I'm like, I have to figure out what's going to happen with your characters. I want to see how you did, everything with Atlantis. I got to give you credit. I've been researching a lot of blurbs and descriptions, and I have to say that's one of the better ones I've seen in
Oh,
the last
thank you.
several months. So that was really, really good. So if you guys haven't yet, go to PL Stewart's website, check out right at the top there. Okay, A Drowned Kingdom. If you need more than that description or what he said so far, again, I don't know if this is the podcast for you. It just sounds awesome. It's such a great idea. I have to say, I just, as soon as I heard that's what you were doing, and I love the whole, because at first I was like, oh, I'll definitely read it, if it's about Atlantis. But then when I found out that, you were writing about the aftermath, for me, I always wondered that. And as a historian, I study a lot of that. And I'm of the notion that that actually did happen, and that's what happened. And I think there's a lot of evidence to that. So to me, I was just like, yeah, that's the book for me. So it's super cool.
Well, I'm glad. I'm
Yeah,
glad
that's
to hear
awesome.
that. Thank you.
Yeah. So this was a great question, I think, for you, and I'm really interested to hear your answer. So for that third question, what has been different in your writing process with writing book two versus book one?
Oh wow, writing book two. Well, the first thing is I have to admit, and a lot of my fellow writing colleagues that I've spoke to feel the same way. You feel this enormous pressure. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but at first it feels like that you're so focused on making book two that much better, like astronomically better than book one, right? You're coming out, you're a novice writer, you're a rookie, you put your first book out there. It's not going to be technically perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but the thing is, you're really trying to take the things that were really good about your first book, and then by then now you have some critiques and some reviews, and you have to hear what people say, right, about the negatives or the areas for opportunities, and then but still keep the really good things, and then look at those criticisms, and if it's something that's a one-off, that's one thing, but if all the readers are saying something common about your book, then you really have to pay attention, I think, and address accordingly. I mean, you have to write your book.
Yeah.
Yes, you're writing for an audience, but you have to write the book that you're going to write. So, but with that second book, you feel this enormous pressure. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to make it that much better than book one, and I really have to. You don't want to feel like you're, if it's somewhat successful, that you're one hit wonder. They talk about
Yeah.
sophomore
Yeah.
jinx in
Yeah.
sports, and like
It's true. Yeah.
you really feel that pressure. But it's funny, like once the book was written, and especially now that the arcs are out there, the advanced reading copies, and people seem to feel like, yeah, it is actually better than book one, and not that I'm not proud of book one, I with all its flaws, and
Yeah.
but I really felt like I did write a better book with book two, and the early reviews seem to support that, and that's why book three, which is coming out next year, which I'm in the middle of writing, I feel it's gonna be that much better than book two. So, because my goal is continuous improvement, right?
Yeah.
You're only as good as your last book. You got to keep striving to get better and better and better, right? And there's no such thing as complacency. So, but yeah, that was the difference between book one and book two, is more of that pressure. You know what I mean? Book one, nobody knows who you are. Nobody,
Yeah.
knows your
Now
brand.
there's
The book is
expectations.
out there. Yeah, like the expectations aren't, but now there's expectations on me.
Yeah.
So I have to deliver with every book to just keep upping that ante and make that book even better. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm working on.
That's awesome. I know just like a couple of people I just started following must have had your advanced reader copies for book two, and that's what I've seen. I saw several so far, like three or four people, and we're like, oh, this was a lot better than book one, and they said like they raved about book one. I went back and was just looking at what they were saying. So I like to study those kinds of things. So that makes me really excited. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like I just think you said so many great things there. I just want to really quick dissect. So, you're talking about pressure. Obviously now, I love how you said that, it's the sophomore inks, where it's like you feel it. And I just think that, it's easy for me because I can write several first books, and I can put them out there or whatever. But I just feel like, any book two is going to be like, I'm already feeling it for my book two, because I'm trying to,
That's
plan
awesome.
out my trilogy better. And I'm like, well, now I have to change these things to then change book two. And my friends and I were just talking about that, where it is hard, right? Where you're trying to write book two or somewhat get something down for it and plan it out. But it's like, if you don't have the first book done, and then you also don't have it out to your audience, how on earth are you going to know, those things like you're saying, like how are you going to meander that? And I do think
Yeah.
you're right. There's a lot of pressure, and I think it's a lot harder than a lot of people give you guys credit for. You know what I mean? Like it's harder than it sounds to, because you don't, like if you knew what people were going to say ahead of time, you could just write book 2 and 3 and plan. And well, like I had a friend who planned a trilogy. He's like, well, this is what I planned so far, but he's like, I'm going to have to wait. And I think it's especially hard for people that are trying to rapid release, because it's like you have to fix things like right off the bat, with book 2 and 3. And yeah, I agree. I totally agree with everything you said. I think it's a lot harder than people give people credit for. So I give you
Yeah, thank
credit
you.
for being
Oh, well,
able to.
thank you.
Yeah, it's hard because you have to listen to those people. But you also have to tell the story that you want to tell. So I
Yeah,
definitely agree with you. It's a lot harder than people think.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
So for that fourth question, how I'm so interested in this because I have a lot of mythology for everything that I do. So for question 4 there, how did you go about your mythology and religion in your world building process?
Well, my version of Atlantis is somewhat different from, the original mythology. It's not set in a Mediterranean type, ancient world, ancient more Greek, Greco-Roman, that area of the world. It's somewhat akin to like a more medieval type, European medieval type, realm. But I think with me, I'm inspired a lot by religion, and I'm fascinated by religion. I'm a spiritual person. I don't really consider myself formally religious. I was raised very formally religious, and my mother is. I found that as I grew and evolved, I feel that I'm more spiritual. But I've all been fascinated with organized religion. Take your major religion, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, etc. And I'm always fascinated by the push and pull and tug between spirituality and religion. And what I mean by that is the construct around the religion, the human construct, the hierarchy, the organization around worshiping, the spirituality. Like so, the nuns, the priests, the temple leaders, etc. Versus what is the worship of that god, goddess, deities, what does that actually mean, and what's the difference? Because I always say this, I've said in the previous interviews, that religion, for all of its good intentions, is flawed because it's human made,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
subject to all of humans flaws. The divine in most cases is, most people believe that divinities are beyond these frailties, not in all cases, but in many religions, the divine is supposed to be something more perfect, right?
yeah,
And there's that struggle between like the human beings who, in many cases, all good intentions, trying to be devout, to be to be good people, but they have these human frailties. And then of course, because it's a political system, these political systems are all fraught, or at least they're susceptible to corruption.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you can have a religion that the intent is the opposite of corruption, but it becomes corrupt because of the frailties of the human. So I always found that's fascinating, especially when it ties into the theme of colonialism, which is big in my book, because you have these it's, take history, doesn't matter your era, Egyptians, Incas, British Empire. You have these eras where these great colonial powers who have these distinct religions, that they feel that they should impose on the territories they conquer for the good of the territories, doesn't always turn out so well, right? So these
Usually
colonial
never,
powers,
right?
yeah, these colonial powers, they come with all these positives and advances and technological advances, all these great things, but then they also come with these, sometimes these horrible consequences for the places that they subjugate, and forcing their religion, their worship, their faith on these other places. So, and that's just historical. Like I said, it's regardless of your, your colonial power, they all tend to do that. That's just a
Yeah,
human
yeah,
nature thing. So that fascinates me
yeah,
about the religious aspect, and the mythology and the lore, like because it's almost like, you know um Egypt existed. There were pharaohs, there were pyramids, there were this great empire. But then there's the lore and mythology of all their gods and goddesses, right? That's tied in there. And like that's what really fascinates me about that aspect.
I mean, you got a lot of great themes there. I gotta say, my buddy and I were just discussing the science fiction aspect because we really want to. I feel like fantasy and urban fantasy come really easily to him and I because we read more fantasy. I used to read a lot more sci-fi, but we talked about that. I like things like that. Like I thought, like it'd be cool to see like um it'd be cool for us, I think, not the characters, but to see like a colonial space power then go to another planet and those same type of themes. Like I just think it's really, and I thought it'd be interesting to take it from two different alien like perspectives, but one's just more powerful than the other and discover
Oh
those
yeah.
themes. So I love how you're talking about that. To me, that just as a history teacher, it's like we try and teach these kids all the time. I always tell the kids because they enter eighth grade, and we usually don't, unfortunately, teach them real history until they get to eighth grade. And a lot of middle school teachers like to water it down and things. And there are certain things that I don't do because I just think maturity wise and things. But then again, it's like they only have 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then they get thrown into this ocean. So we really try to put it in stages. But I always tell parents right off the bat and students, I'm like, listen, I'm like, we don't sugarcoat it. Like we start with Civil War. I'm like, we don't sugarcoat slavery, colonialism, especially those, any of those things. Like we don't sugarcoat, Reconstruction, whatever it is. Like we just tell it how it is because we want them to understand those themes, and just be better people, let alone better citizens. So I love that personally because I think that, we could give, classes a book like yours and, it'd be more exciting, I think, than maybe some of the books that we end up reading at times. But, you'd still be able to see those same types of themes. So I think that's where a lot of my historian friends really liked your book one, A Drowned Kingdom, because they saw a lot of those common themes in there. So for them, that was really cool to see it in a fantasy setting, and it always is for me as well. So that's really
That's
awesome that you're
awesome.
bringing those in there. That's super cool.
Oh well, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, everything we're talking about just gets me more excited for A Drowned Kingdom,
That's awesome.
which I hope the audience is the same way. So for that fifth question, I'm so interested, and I kind of wanted to. I saw something on your website, so I kind of stopped because I am kind of interested to hear you explain it. So for that fifth one, is your book in the first person point of view? And if so, how did you decide on this narrative style?
Oh yes. Well, my book is definitely first person.
Oh, that's cool.
There's the reason for that is I actually love reading first person books. I know a lot of people don't prefer it. I remember when I was in university, university professors would, I took English, and predominantly my major was medieval literature with a
Oh,
minor in
cool.
history, and but I took a lot of writing classes there, writing courses, and they said, oh well, first person, it's limited, it's a narrow perspective. One of our professors hated it. They said, that's for weak writers, and but some of my favorite books of all time and some of the best-selling books of all time are first person. So
Jim Butcher.
yeah, so I love it. But the reason I specifically chose it for my series is because my series is all about a flawed, bigoted, homophobic, sexist, misogynistic, colonialist prince. And I wanted people to get inside his head and understand why he thinks the way that he does, what his upbringing was like that formed him into the person he was, what his challenges are, what his insecurities are, because it's the story is the series is really about him, and his response to everything, right? Can he change? How, to what degree will he change? What are the things that could make him change? So I wanted people inside his head, and it's not always pretty, it's not always pleasant,
Yeah.
and to be inside his head because of his thoughts. And the thoughts are not, they're the opposite of how I think. But I've throughout my life, I've encountered, unfortunately, people that
Oh
think
yeah,
the
yeah.
way he does in various form. So I want to be realistic, and I thought that if I made it first person, people would get a much better understanding of the character, and they would eventually. Most people probably start off disliking him, but I think in time, learning to know him better and seeing some of his positive qualities, to a degree, some people might root for him, some might not. He's very complicated, but I thought that was the best perspective from which to write, to allow people to really understand the character, and because he's the focus of the story. So
Oh, that's cool. I like how you immediately wrote him so that people could have not just a retrospective on him, but also, maybe that theme of have more of a, retrospective self. I think a lot of people, a lot of those things you just mentioned. So to me, that's even cooler because I just love that with characterization, first of all. So bravo. I love
Oh, thank you.
complicated characters. Those two-dimensional characters, I've just read so much by now. I'm just like, and especially like Michael R. Fletcher was talking about in their podcast, Wizard Words and Words. And he was like, he's like writing ruins certain books for me. And I get that because I'll go and read a book now and I'm like, I need more complicated characters.
Yeah.
I need more. I need more for my fantasy. I need more for my sci-fi. So to me, when you're saying that he's a very complicated character and there's a process to him, that to me just, especially from a writer but a reader standpoint, it makes me more excited to read the book now. So, and I like that theme of retrospection because I don't think, a lot of people, we try to teach our students retrospection, and it's like, it's one of the hardest things for them to do is like just to admit like, oh, this is how you were raised, this is our culture, is it right, from a purely retrospective standpoint. So I think that's a really cool theme that you got going there, so I really hope that,
Oh, thank you.
I hope that you keep going with things like that. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
I feel like your things you're saying, and this is what people that I know who, reviewed book one and book two, what they're saying is, like again, I think a lot of people can relate to that type of character, even if they're not that character, which no
Yes.
offense, all of us have something of that character, right?
Yeah,
Even if
absolutely.
we want to admit
Absolutely.
it. But I think it's even like you said, right? Like you've encountered people like that. And I think that it makes you, not that it makes it okay for the things that they do, but maybe getting onto a common road and understanding something
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
will maybe
Yeah.
help everybody further down the road.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
I like that theme. So
Oh,
yeah, that's
thanks.
really cool.
That's awesome. Awesome.
So for number six there, did you find it harder or easier when it came to book two's expansion of your world building and characterization? Like, did you think you had enough there and then you could expand on it? Or did you maybe feel like, oh no, I don't have enough here and I have to add this whole other aspect? Or maybe a little of both.
No, my problem is I have so much to pack into,
Amen.
the 7 books that, because there are so many layers. There's so much history in the world I've created. There's a history of Authran society, the Atlanteans, and their history is rich and very, very, very steeped in legend and all these heroes, and that's actually what led me to, but it's also tied into a bigger kind of theme that I can't really disclose, but that's what led me to writing 2 prequel trilogies about these 2 famous figures that Authran worships as his heroes and thinks that they're a certain way, but believe me, when you see the trilogies, they're not quite the way he envisions them
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they lived hundreds of years before
yeah,
he
yeah,
was
yeah,
born. So
yeah,
it's just like anyone else in history. You read about the person, but were they really like that? Well, you weren't there, so you
yeah,
don't know. So
yeah,
so that's what I love about the fact that I can do that, go back in time and show what they were like and what their society and their world was like. And then with the current series, Othrin is Othrin thinks that Atlantean history is the most important one, but there's a big wide world out there, right? He only
yeah,
looks at things from the perspective of a conqueror. His society's conquered other kingdoms in another nearby continent, but now that's all gone. His realm is destroyed. They've lost that hold on that continent. Now he's gone to this other continent that is full of people who've been warring for centuries, and no one's managed to take control, but yet he thinks, even though being in this minority, that he's going to be the leader of taking this thing over. So and within that there's all these different cultures and kingdoms and societies, and they have their own histories and mythologies. So there's a lot to pack in there. So no, it was definitely not. The issue is trying to layer it enough so
yeah.
that without overwhelming the reader, that they can see that there's all this richness to the world building. So what I try to do is I try to take each book and kind of move the lens slowly through the continent. So
Mm.
you kind of focus, you're kind of in each book, you're kind of in one spot for a while for the most part, maybe 2 or 3, so that you get to see each spot within the this particular continent. And then slowly as the books continue, you'll continue to move around, and each book will kind of mostly focus on a different area. And then as you realize that there's much more and beyond that, those other areas, even outside the continent, will become a much bigger part of the future series. So I'm just kind of layering it that way.
Oh, that's cool. I like that though, like how you explain that. I think that that's a really good way to go about the world building. It's kind of I was talking about like Emily Inkpen, where she was talking about her characterization, and I told her in the interview, I said I've heard this said 100 times, but however she said it, right, just clicked better for me. And I like how you said that too with world building. That's another thing I think that is said really well is like with a lens, and you're just kind of zooming into this spot like Google Earth, and then going from there. So I think that's a great thematic way of handling world building and fitting things in that are necessary, connecting other pieces to areas, but not overwhelming your reader. That's the only thing that with Mal's Book of the Fallen, I'm like, I feel like I'm swimming every time in the middle of an ocean, and I'm really tired, and I'm being weighed down by my wet clothes. I'm trying my hardest. They're
And
great
that's an
books.
iconic series. Yeah, that's an
Yeah,
iconic series. But
yeah,
and I know, and even me, like one of the even when you for one of the things that some people found it hard was that in the first part of book one, there's a lot of world building, a lot to absorb because you're seeing authors describing his Atlantis, which he loves, and he knows every part of it. You're really getting all that information about it, right? So but again, those are things you learn as you go forward, how to layer things. But also, I wrote that for a certain reason because Atlantis was going to be destroyed. So
yeah.
you
You
kind
have
of
to.
I wanted people to know as much as they could, and also create that sense of sadness that something so beautiful and
Yeah,
that meant so much to the main character and so many people was destroyed. But the things about Atlantis is that you will continue to go back to it throughout the series. You will see all the links and why
oh,
you
that's
need to
cool.
know certain things, and that will continue even though it's destroyed through the series. And then of course later on you go back to see Atlantis when it was still very vibrant in these prequel trilogies hundreds of years before Othrin lived, when you'll see how different it was in those two different time periods that I write about these heroes. And so I think people will hopefully find that fascinating.
Yeah, I already do. I just love that you have taken that historical perspective of, I talk to kids all about this all the time. And, like, no offense, but Thomas Jefferson, let's say. And I was like, what do you know about Thomas Jefferson at the start of the year? And this was like to get them reeled in. And, then we were like, oh, did you know that he owned slaves? We're like, did you know that he had slave children? All these things. And they were like devastated. What we were like, okay, this is an example of hero worship.
Yes.
No offense to anybody, but from a historical perspective, it is because we only see these people's good sides and we don't actually see them as the flawed humans like the rest of us that they are. So I just personally, from a history teacher's perspective, I just love, and that already makes me really excited for the prequels. I just love that you
Thanks.
did that because they always say, right? Don't meet your heroes. Well,
Yeah.
not always true. I met Richard Lee
Exactly.
Byers. Richard Lee Byers. He's one of my writing heroes. One of the like I'd say three authors that I read that made me want to write. But it's not always that way. But in terms of history, I do wonder that. Like we had a question that a kid asked the other day. He's like, if you could, we just did like fun thing on Friday before break, and he was like, if you could meet one historical person, who would you meet? And I was like, ooh. I said somebody, and he goes, but would you really want to meet that person though? And I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
That's a great point, because you have this hero worship or, this idea of this person hundreds of years ago. And it's like, it's probably not very accurate. So I think that's a really
Yeah.
cool thing you got going there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, do you want your bubble bursted, or are you willing to accept them for how they really are, and how much,
Yeah.
to what degree would that change your opinion of them if you could meet them today? Like me and Martin Luther King. Historically I've read about many of his faults and flaws. He was, like he's a, a flawed human being like the rest of us, but you know, he was such an iconic figure for me, and I do hold him such high regard. But how would I feel if I met him in person? I think I'd still be impressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like that's just you're exactly right. That's an excellent point. So
Well, it's like me and Harriet Tubman. Like, I'm like, do I really want to meet Araminta, or do I? Because my kids said the same thing because that's who I was talking about, and they were like, well, you have her like way up there, like on a pedestal. I'm like, I really do, because I'm like, when you walk down to the South that many times to free people, and you're a fugitive, and people are literally hunting for you, I'm like that's just like you have to have a
yeah,
different mindset to
yeah,
be that one of those people, and I'm just like I said, I do agree with you though. Part of me worries that, but the other part of me is like, just so overwhelming that I just would want to just look her in the eyes, and see her and really see her. And that way I think it would add to their perspectives. That's what I told him when he asked me. I was like, no, I would still do it. But maybe some other people I wouldn't, but her, I'm like, yeah, for sure. I just want to know, like, I think that's so cool. It's like, because I always think of that, from a historical perspective. I'm like, you know, like, were these people, really, did they have those qualities, verbatim, or I guess you could say, or did they have something and we just added our own perspective onto it, I guess. So when you're talking about, heroes from hundreds of years ago, I think that hits the theme so, just right on the head and just nails it. So I'm really excited for both of those
Oh,
prequels.
well, thank you. Yeah, because unfortunately, the farther and farther you get back in history, the less empirical data you have.
Yes.
We don't have video. We don't
Yeah.
have audio recordings, but of what
Yeah.
Henry V did, or
Yeah.
what. So yeah. No, I agree.
Look at like King Arthur was like what one of my kids said, and he's like, well, he probably wasn't this blah 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 person, with these romantic ideas. He's like, those were and Robin Hood's another one. Like I study a lot of things where they look at actual outlaws that could have been Robin Hood, and some of the original tales of him and songs. It's like he's not a hero. Like he's
Yeah,
almost an
exactly.
anti-hero, like verbatim, like
Yeah,
more than the Punisher even.
yeah,
So yeah, it's like it definitely adds a huge question mark, I think, to what do we
yeah,
value, and because we value certain things in our society today that they didn't value back then, and
yeah,
I think that it could be the same for you, with the prequels. So I think that'd be really interesting to
yeah.
check out. And again, I think I was just talking to, Emily Inkpen and HM Long about this weekend. It's like, I feel like you guys are doing things like that add to the fantasy genre, and really expand people's ideas, imagination. It's not the same old, like no offense to anybody, tropes and the classics are great, but I just think we're at a certain point within our society that it's like Tolkien. Like, no offense to anybody, Hobbit's my favorite book, but I accept the fact that he lived in a country and a time period where his ideas were flawed. Look at the fact of how few women he has, the few lines they have, the few actions that they have. That's how women were seen back then. And I think there's a reason that, he doesn't mention whether or not they're there, elves of color or people of color, whatever. And I get that maybe it was certain geography, but at the same time, you have to realize that in that time and age, no offense to anybody, but he was still fighting for colonialism, imperialism, in World War I. And it's like, that's just the reality. And I think if you, look at those kind of things from a historical perspective in those people, I think you get a much better idea at where we can actually take fantasy and sci-fi, because I think representation is important, because this is your audience, and
Yeah.
it's really valuable, and it doesn't matter who that representation is. So I just think that that's really cool that, what you're doing. I think it really adds to the genre and really,
Oh,
it
well,
makes
thank you.
people like me think like, okay, I got to go back to my stuff and up my ante, and again, I think I personally feel like, well, I was talking to Scott about this. I feel like we're all on the same team, and it's like,
Yes,
you're my
definitely.
teammate and something amazing you
Yeah,
do. I'm like, I'm going to go back and work twice as hard. Well,
yeah,
readers get that much better of a product. So I
yeah.
applaud you for
Agreed.
making these amazing decisions, especially from a history teacher's point of view. So that's really,
Oh,
really cool.
thank you for that. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. This is the one that I really, really wanted to ask you. Number 7, how did you go about filming your book trailer for A Drowned Kingdom?
Well, as I'd mentioned, Daniel, so we have Freeze and Press, my indie publishing assist company. They have a video production team.
Oh, that's
Uh,
cool.
I went to them and said it's one of the packages you can get with your publication packages.
Oh, that's
I'd like
cool.
to make a video. They okay, what's your concept? You had to what they gave me was essentially a template, like a storyboard, and what I would like, what are the elements I'd like to see in there, and what I'd like to figure prominently. Well, I said, water, because the theme of water with obviously a drowned kingdom, and at Atlantis being sunk, and water also being symbolic of washing away of expectations,
Ooh, that.
washing away of an entire civilization and their beliefs, and their that empire being washed away, kind of like a rebirth, also water rebirth, and new expectations, and a new beginning. And of course the triangular circle emblem, which adorns all the swag, and adorns my book cover. That's a very central theme in the entire series, and beyond. And so I wanted that to figure prominently, and I want to be and I wanted, you know, a sense of, you know, just like the legend of Atlantis that Plato made, that, you know, I wanted that apocalyptic, okay, the world is, you know, this place is destroyed now, but now they're the new beginning. They're going to this new continent across the water, and what's going to happen, right? So that's so I came up, I gave them my concept. They did a great job of incorporating that concept into the video, and yeah, so hence you have the video for a Drown Kingdom. So I think it's, and then the big thing was matching the music. They gave me a lot of choices for music, and I found
Oh, it's perfect.
this one song called Shatter, and it was, I think it was so representative of what had happened to Arthur in his world. All his expectations shattered, where who and what he thought he was going to be in life was shattered. The supremacy of his society was shattered, and now he has to pick up the shattered pieces and make something out of it, right? So
That's cool.
you know, that's and it was very stirring, a very stirring
Yeah, it really was.
kind of music. So really, you know, kind of like gives you those goosebumps and those
Yeah.
chills. So you know, and then I definitely wanted that symbol with the water to be at the last thing you see before you go to the covers. You want that sensation of, you know, yeah, that triangle and circle is this iconic thing that it's left this impression on you, right? And that's why that last shot is, you know, with the water on the beach, and then suddenly the triangle circle comes out of that, and then you fly to the book. And I thought that was really cool. So
Oh, it's super cool. Like I said, I used to teach graphic design, and I studied video production for a little bit. And so for those in our audience, I will be putting the A Drowned Kingdom trailer in the description. So please make sure you guys go and check it out so you can actually see what we're talking about. And you might think, oh, okay, another book trailer. No, no, you really got to check it out just from an author's perspective. Somebody who's trying to advertise. I think it was just long enough. It gave you just enough information, but the imagery, and again, Shattered, that was such a great song. It was very stirring. It made me feel like, something happened, catastrophe, but now we're going on an adventure. And I actually looked at it again after reading your description, for A Drowned Kingdom on your website. And I just thought the two matched each other so well. The lettering, I have to say, from a graphic design standpoint, the lettering, the colors that they used, I think that they really evoked, I don't know. I just felt like they really fit with the story, from what I know of it so far. And yeah, that last part, it's just awesome. Don't want to ruin it for anybody, but yeah, definitely click on it in the description, check it out, or, go to PL's, website, check it out. I think personally, from an advertising standpoint, like that was so cool. And I'm actually going to show it to my buddy tonight, my tech guy. I sent it to another friend of mine. Him and I talked a lot about advertising, and he was like, "Oh, why did you do that? Now I want one." So I think we're gonna do some studying, this summer for more video, production and design and stuff. And we're gonna try. It's probably not gonna be as cool as yours, but we're gonna try and at least.
Well, you never know; might be far cooler than mine. I just, that's what I have. But yeah, no.
Well, yours came first, so if mine ends up being cooler, it's only because we studied, yours and a couple other people that I know, some great ones. But I think, I do think a lot of people, I just think the YouTube video is so underutilized, and it's so cool, like what you can do with it. And the music evokes a lot, Amazon advertisements, Facebook advertisements are great. But I do think, even just advertising that, that trailer every once in a while, or, just sharing it and, having people look at it, I think is just awesome. But yeah, I just have to say, bravo, whatever, decisions you guys made for that. I just personally I actually think it was the best one that I've seen so far, no matter the company. So yeah, it was super cool, especially that ending. I can't wait to watch it later with my buddy tonight. So I know he's gonna be like blown away because we've been seeing a couple other ones. So I was teasing him. I said I saved the best for last. So we're gonna look at yours and try and make some decisions for next year. So
well, that's awesome. I can't wait to see when yours comes out. Yeah, it's just one of those things that just work well. It's just like with the audiobook, another decision that we made recently, like the actors that voice that were just so phenomenal. Like the main there's two main actors, and Adam Curtin, who does Othrin, he just captures that snarky, snooty, privileged, like that's just that posh, like upper, like he he just nails it. And I now that and I'm not an audiobook person, my wife is, who's my business partner, but we were listening to it in the car the other day. It's like, I actually think that it's really one of the best ways. Like, if you're not gonna have the physical copy like this, like ebooks are great, and I know a lot of people love them. They're not as much my thing. I have to read them because of art and stuff, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like my physical copies, my
yeah.
especially my hard copies and the textured feel. But if I'm from now on, if I don't have this, after listening to that, audiobooks are my thing, man, because the experience and to hear, because my book is very much the first part, especially my book, Othman's telling his story. He's telling his story about where he came from, what his kingdom looks like, what his position in that kingdom is, the people who are important in his life, his kingdom's history in terms of their colonialism, and why they were the way they were, his religion, his devoutness in his religion, what the complications are in his relationships with his father and his brother, and all those things. And it's really his story. And I think hearing him tell that on an audiobook, and because the actor did such a great job, it just really just it changes the game in terms of how you experience my book. And I really have to encourage people to, if you're wondering, oh, like, fancy the world, like, if you're looking for a different experience, listen to the audiobook. I really think it's fantastic. Like, the
Yeah, yeah,
job that they did it's really a neat way to absorb
yeah.
the material. So
I personally like, I'm not going to mention the person's name of the book, but I had personally, just for myself, I had one book where I do not think that they had the best person doing it. And then I went and read the book later, and I feel like it kind of dampened the experience just for myself. And I believe it was just that one, narrator. I just don't think they nailed the character. But I was like, oh, I want to start listening to it, and then I'll get into the book. So it took me a while to get in the book. The book, I think, was a lot better than the audio book. But I just think, again, it comes down to your decisions. But like for yours, like I just end up reading, but I love reading a book and then listen to the audiobook. I did it with Christopher G. Brenning's The Hellborn King. I'm almost done with that one. I love the book, and my mom's like, you're just addicted to some certain book. So I'm like so excited because I love getting my own take and doing my own, thing and acting out in my head. I just weird like that. But then I love to compare with whoever you get, because a lot of times what I found is for most books, and I'm sure yours is like that, is like, I love the book and then I go and do the audiobook, and I feel like it just adds to the experience when you get
yeah,
such a great
100%.
narrator, or narrators or actors and actresses. And I like Kevin Hearns was like that. I read his series, the Iron Drew Chronicles. The people they got, like the guy they got was so amazing. It added to the books. So then I went back and read the books again, and I just love when you have a great narrator who adds to the experience, particularly, when they add to whoever they, or what was going on in your head. It's just such a cool experience. That's just how I do it personally. But I love a great audio book, and I just think it really does. It is. I think a lot of people need to understand that, it is your brand, right? Like you have
Yeah.
some amazing swag. I love your symbol, your
Thanks.
logo. And I think when you get a great, narrator, I think everything you do should be part of your brand. So I'm so glad to hear. And I've heard people have really liked your narrator and actor, and actors and actresses. So I'm actually really excited to read the book, and then uh, sometimes I just can't help. I get right into the audiobook on my next drive to work. So I'm really
Yeah,
excited
thank you
about
so
that.
much. Yeah, they really are great. Yeah, yeah. Sean Polite, who voices a lot of the other characters, he's phenomenal too, because he has actually in some ways a tougher job because he's got such a multiplicity of characters. But yeah,
Yeah.
that main overarching voice of Adam Curtin, Othran, he is like now in my head he's Othran, right?
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
but anyways, yeah, no, that's awesome. I
That's
do
super
hope you
cool.
get
Well,
that.
we'll definitely have to put the audio book, the link in there for as well, so people can go and check that out. But I've
Yeah,
heard a
thank
lot
you.
about both of them, so that's a lot of positive things, particularly about Sean. I know he's been doing a lot more recently, so that's super super cool. For that last one, so any news, updates, promos, things like that, like you would like to share with us now?
Well, yeah, okay. A Drowned Kingdom is has been out for a year now, and it is out on audiobook just recently on ACX/Audible. It's also on
Oh, cool.
Awesound. So you can pick it up there. Obviously, if you have the ACX Audible, your Amazon. I remember Amazon membership is structured. You can probably get it for free, so that's great. Or $0. That's always good. I think it's phenomenal. Again, the actors Sean Polite and Adam Curtin did a phenomenal job. So that's recently released. So The Last of the Atlanteans, book 2 in the Drowned Kingdom saga, is expected in the next few weeks.
Oh, that's cool.
So far, again, I mean, I'm so honored and humbled that the readers that have advanced review copies are really saying some good things about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's up on Goodreads, so you can put it on your TBR if you'd like on Goodreads, and you can see some of the reviews and what people are saying. So, and of course, you can see a Drowned Kingdom there too. I'm currently writing book 3 called Lord and King, and
Oh,
that
that's
will
cool.
drop in 2023. So that's book 3 of 7. So the adventure is just beginning. So I hope that, I think that if people are saying that The Last of Atlantis is that much better than A Drowned Kingdom, well, Lord
Yeah.
and King is
Oh, that's awesome.
it to me, that is the book that's gonna turn the series on its head. And I hope people are ready for especially the ending and some things that happen
Yeah,
during
yeah.
that book, because I think it's engaging, it's dramatic, and it's some of the things are very traumatic. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with the world in 2023. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I look forward to having you on for that and get it out there. That'd be really, really cool. It'd be an honor to have you come back for that.
I would
So
be honored
it'd be
too.
awesome.
Thank
And
you.
I'd love also to have you back after a while too, once book two's out, in the spring or summer, and see how things are going, especially compared to book one. I always like to, get people get a lot of data. That way we can, see what's going on and I can
I'd
learn
love to.
myself. So that's
I'd love
awesome.
to. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. I'd
yeah.
love to.
I'll also obviously put in a link, whatever you want, or I'll find it, and put in a link for book two. I really want people to go and check out that cover. Just for like the first one is amazing. But that second one just evokes so much imagery and thought, and and I think yeah, it's just super cool. I don't want to ruin it for everybody in the audience, so just go click on it, check out both. Just go to PL's website, check out both. They both are awesome books. I've heard a lot about them. I'm really excited. I'm a big paperback guy, so I'm really excited to get A Drowned Kingdom.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
it's actually on my
Yeah,
list for my next
it's my
pick. So.
baby. It's my baby right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just looks
That's
so
my
good. I was
baby.
saying to my
That's my
wife, I was
baby.
like, she goes, I go, it's just one of those books that you have to have in paperback on your shelf. And she goes, but I thought you just said that about so and so's book.
My wife says the same thing. She knows I'm a book addict. She's like, she looks at the credit card. Did you buy more books again today? Like, yeah, it's I'm gonna be living in the garage soon if I keep
Yeah, yeah,
buying
yeah,
books.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I like you. I love books. I'm a blogger. I'm a blogger for the wonderful Before We Go blog, led by the
Oh,
incredible
that's
Beth
awesome.
Tabler. Please follow Beth Tabler on Twitter. She is just one of the best people in the writing community, period. And my co assistant editor, Brianna Schneider, she's just a wonderful person, just brilliant. Both of them and all the bloggers at Before We Go blog, they're just incredible people. And I'm honored to be one of the assistant editors. And so because of that, obviously, I read even more books than normal, and I
Yeah,
love my physical copies. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, my bookshelves are gonna crack, and my wife's gonna kick me out. But
yeah.
for now, I'm okay. So I'll just keep
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
I'll
been
just keep
funneling
sneaking
them
them
to
in
my
there.
friend. Every time I read something good, I funnel it to my friend. I'm like, just keep it at your house for a little bit. And then he goes, well, so you're a teacher. He goes, so we're gonna have to like smuggle the books back into your house. He's like, is that like an Underground Railroad situation? Like, is that like, he like referenced the Cold
Oh,
War? He's like, are we gonna have to go get across the DMZ zone? And that's like your front porch. And I was just laughing. I was like, yeah, we'll find a way to get him back in here somehow. But
yeah,
I was teasing him. I
yeah.
said, if I can keep him at your house long enough for a couple years, we'll just go get a bigger house, and then I'll put him in and he'll never notice. So this will probably
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
one episode my wife, she's watched like quite a few, so this will probably be the next one she watches. So she's gonna come at me and be like, "No more physical copies."
Yeah, I definitely get book envy. I have some great
Oh,
social media friends that are on Twitter, and
yep,
like Literature Lo-Fi, and maybe To the Pages and Steve Talks Books and all those people, and you see their bookshelves in the back. It's like,
yep.
ooh, I want that, and like I want that, and like you just go, okay, and yeah. So it's but there's worse habits, there's worse
That's what I
habits
say.
out there.
Yeah, like
So
I don't smoke, I don't drink. I'm
yeah.
like I always tell her, and I usually try and eat somewhat healthy. I don't always succeed like this weekend, but I'm like we don't do too much around work and stuff. So I was like, buying a book is my version of a vacation. Usually
Yeah, yeah,
somebody
exactly.
I know. And now I had the podcast, be like, well, I gotta buy PL's book because I had him on the podcast. It's a really good excuse for me. So
Well, I'm honored. I hope you enjoy it when you read it. I hope you enjoy
oh
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really, really excited, especially to blog it and to put it up on the channel. So And again, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Anytime you want to come back on, like Chris got a hold of me. He's like, hey, can I come back on earlier than we planned? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, come on down, anytime you guys want to come by and, talk about writing or books or, whatever. Definitely down for that. So thank
Yeah,
you
I'd
so
love
much.
to, and I watch all your stuff, and I
Oh,
watched some
cool.
of your recent ones that the one you did with Crystal Batar, who's
Oh, yeah.
so
He's amazing.
amazing, one of my faves,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she's a brilliant author. Legacy Bright watched one of the indie books of the year for sure for the
Yeah, yeah.
past year, and I'm definitely gonna be watching Chris's because
Oh, yeah.
Hellborn King is high on my TBR, and excited the second book coming out. So maybe by the time I get to Hellborn King, that there'll be a second book to read. So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
good best of luck to him. He's making a lot of noise in the grim dark.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
very dark and
Yeah.
very
Oh, man.
interesting. So yeah, but anyways, I'm wishing you best of luck. I know you're blowing up, and your podcast is going
Trying.
really well. So kudos
Trying.
to all you, and thanks for what you do for us in the writing community.
Oh, yeah,
It
yeah,
means a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
So
Anytime.
without people like you, we writers don't have that platform to talk about their books. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's always fun to talk to somebody like yourself. So again, you already gave me some great ideas just for my own stuff or just to,
That's
just to
fantastic.
research. So yeah, again, I really appreciate you coming on. And again, to our audience, please make sure you go to PL Stewart's, websites. Everything is in the description for every single thing that we do. So all of, his stuff's going to be there. You can go to my website, find the podcast. We'll have those author profiles like we've been talking about for a while, up by July 1st, actually. So we're working hard on those here in the spring. Again, just make sure you go and check out A Drowned Kingdom, and book two's cover is amazing. The description sounds awesome. So yeah, I really look forward to getting my own copy. Hope you have a great rest of the day, my friend, and I look forward to talking to you on Twitter.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to talk to you again, Daniel. Take
Yeah,
care.
yeah,
Thanks
yeah.
for having
Have
me.
a good rest of your Sunday, my friend. I'll see you later.
You too. All the best. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.